All right. Well, my name is Rob Krueger, and I am happy for the opportunity to talk a little bit about the SCUDEM competition that my son was part of at Concordia University in St. Paul, Minnesota. Let's see here. What am I doing wrong? There we go. Just first about me, I am a professor at Concordia University, as I said, in St. Paul. I've been chair for a number of years. I've been at Concordia for 20 years. I have a teaching degree from Concordia University, one of our sister schools in Nebraska, and a PhD from the University of Nebraska in Lincoln. My son is a junior math major. He spent a year at a small private school in Iowa and decided to transfer back as we started our esports team. And he was recruited by the coach, and he is currently a co-captain on the esports team. His game is Overwatch, and they're actually practicing right now. So he had two choices. He could help with this presentation or participate in his team practice, and he chose to play video games. Not surprising. A little bit about SCUDEM for those of you that don't know. It's the SIMIODE challenge using differential equations modeling. And this was my first attempt at this. I had looked at it in the past, but this time I had a group of students that we could work with. And so we dipped our toe. There are teams of up to 3 undergraduate students that participate. And there's 3 published scenarios that the students can choose from. This year was the 5th year of the competition. It was a virtual competition, which we will talk about the pluses and minuses for my group, as well as, again, this was our first look into this, and we've learned a lot of things. All right. I was able to do an independent study with 6 of my upper level undergraduate math majors, which my son Jack was part of. Our objective for this course was just to do more math. The students generally take the prescribed courses in our program, and they tend to be pretty busy students. Many of them are involved with athletics on campus or other programs. And so to get them to do extra math, we got to tie it to some credits. And so we had an independent study, and the students ranged from a couple of credits each up to 4 credits if they wanted to do more work with it. And that was the setting for these 6 students. The course covered a couple of modeling scenarios that you can get in the SIMIODE community, as well as some that I wrote and I've actually published on SIMIODE. Then we took a deeper dive into SAGE. For those of you unfamiliar, it's an open source computer algebra system. I introduced it in some of my courses, but this was an opportunity to do a few other things that we hadn't done before, as well as learning more things about data analytics tools. And so we looked at some applications in Excel, such as Monte Carlo and the like. We did some students looked at some different programs that are out there. We have some visualization software and other things that we took a look at. And then we wanted to prepare and compete in some contests, such as the SCUDEM. So one of the things we did was look at some practice problems from 2019. And my son's group chose the chemical espionage problem. It was problem C of the 2019 year. The synopsis of that, we had large cabbage white female butterflies use a chemical to attract mates. And the males also use chemical signals to dissuade other males so the males can get the goods. But of course, at the same time, parasitic wasps can detect these signals that the females put out as well as the males put out. And so then they are attracted to the females, and they lay their eggs among the butterfly eggs, which of course cause havoc once the larvae are released. There's lots of resources to prepare the students on the SIMIODE site. And so I had participated, first of all, in 2 SIMIODE conferences, and the Mindy and the DMARC along with one of the members of the audience here, Lyle. And so I was able to get good contacts with Brian Winkle and his large group of resources, other participants in those conferences and workshops. So they talked a lot about how the students benefited from participation in the SCUDEM competition, and I wanted to try it. They've got lots of past problems and solutions available. And then what was really particularly nice is a few students created a video giving students advice. And that was really helpful to the students to kind of outline what they needed to do. The scoring rubric, which I will show you here, is also very helpful. So students can see specifically what they need to do to be well executed, well communicated, and of course, essentially correct, not always a nice form solution. And I'll talk a little bit about some of those pitfalls, and then what their scores could be. Interestingly, though, as in anything, the scores came back wildly disparate, where some people gave students a 2, where they gave them a 4, and said essentially the same thing. And so always an interesting thing for students to see. They're used to my 1 score, but when they get multiple scores that are a range, well, that's just a good learning experience for their future, finding out that you know, you do work and one person will look at it in a completely different light as others. And that's just a good learning experience. So the assumption Jack's group made for their 2019 the 2019 project, that the wasps were the only predators that were going to hijack those eggs from the butterfly. The butterflies were the only interactive prey that the wasps were going to be interested in, that they had this closed environment, and so not migration of either of the other species, that we're all going to stay intact. Continuous growth of the butterfly egg population, the wasp population, and of course the butterflies themselves, and then the wasp and butterfly population don't need to starve, and that we're going to lack other resources, not worried about floods and other things coming in, such as other environmental threats. And then, of course, the wasps need the butterflies to reproduce, laying their eggs and feeding their larvae. All right, and so they put together a model based on other models that they had seen in some of their research. And so we've got the wasp and butterfly population. They started off looking at, okay, so male wasps and female wasps, male butterflies and female butterflies. They just found that it got too complicated too quickly. And so they broke it down into just the standard predator-prey type models, where we had the change in the wasp was some constant times the interaction between the butterflies and the wasps, minus the death rate of the wasps, as well as the butterfly population and how things changed similarly. All right, they were able to play around with some code. And so again, we used Sage, and so this was quite successful. We hadn't ever done a lot of numerical solving in my differential equation linear algebra course that I'll talk about here in a moment. And so it was fun for them to kind of get into the code and play with it and see what would happen. And so they got some cool graphs. Of course, it took them a long time to find constants that actually got nice graphs. So they were pretty excited when they were able to actually see the population of the wasps and the population of the, so I guess the butterflies here in red, wasps in blue. Of course, one of the things they learned very quickly is that they didn't label those. And so the user wasn't able to figure out which one on their own. And so that's always a good learning opportunity. And then they did have this interactive graph, the cyclic nature of the wasps to the butterflies. And so that was fun for them to get something that they could visually see. So both groups had interesting results. They seemed jazzed about their model. Everything seemed to be going great. So what possibly could go wrong? Well, let's venture into SCUDEM 2020. So they chose the decay of oil from the Deepwater Horizon accident from 2010. Turns out that there's a lot of oil clumps left over that cleanup wasn't able to take care of. And so there's been some studies on the breakdown of those oil clumps. But in most of the models, when there's the assumed exponential decay, it turned out that that wasn't a good fit for what was happening in the overall clumps of the oil mass. And so what development or what models could be developed to better model what was going on? So what didn't work? Well, first of all, this group had participated in a competition held by Mini MUDAC, or called Mini MUDAC. It was sponsored by Mini Analytics, a nonprofit in the Twin Cities area, showing the strength of data analytics in our community. And so they really enjoyed that competition. And so they were looking forward to something similar to that. They really enjoyed the fact that there were hundreds of peers around them. It was a really exciting day. And in fact, at the end of the competition, they were even given $10 cash for sticking it out throughout the day. So this really made an impression on them. That competition was canceled in the fall due to COVID. So here we had SCUDEM, right? It was a virtual contest. This could replace it, hopefully. Well, it really turned out that they missed that excitement, dressing up, the live competition piece. And so there's a lot of disappointment going into this virtual contest. Well, what could we do to rectify that? Well, from Jack's perspective, he was really interested in working outside the box. And so he had come up with some Excel models that his partners turned out to be less than enthusiastic about or really cared to understand. And of course, he needed help in them generating more of these Excel files, and he couldn't find a good way to automate it. And of course, at this point, I'm not really supposed to help because you're supposed to, as the coach, let them go. And so there was a lot of disappointment that was building there. Once their group finally agreed on all of this, they were really kind of worn out and ready for the competition to be over. There was pluses and minuses to this virtual contest. They gave them more time, but of course, that more time, the energy sort of lagged. They also ran into a lot more trouble than they thought about the video production. And so, of course, you're always tweaking and tweaking and tweaking. And then they finally get to the video stage. They're running into the last evening, and they ran into lots of disasters. And to top it all off, it wasn't Jack's group's problem, but the other group ran into trouble even posting the video. They thought they had posted it, but we turned out 3 weeks later to find out that it actually wasn't even posted. And so there was a lot of things that we ran into trouble. How I screwed up, well, as I said, I teach this differential equations linear algebra course. It's a combined course that a lot of the schools like the University of Minnesota and the community colleges teach. And so for students to be able to transfer in and out, I decided to offer it this way as well. That certainly helps with high school students coming in and filling our classes. And so there's the benefit to be able to offer it more often for my students. However, you can't do everything. Time is certainly a premium in a combined course like that. It was a 4-credit course, so roughly 2 credits of each of the linear algebra and differential equations, and so you're losing pieces of both. The nice thing I like is being able to do the systems of equations in the differential equations models, and so I've always enjoyed those the most, and so you can certainly get that in this course. But one of the sacrifices is certainly we cut out all of the numerical solving. And so that turned out to be a disaster to be able to solve these problems in the real world that don't have nice closed form solutions that coming from the standard equations that you teach. The other problem that I did is that I had the students finishing their presentations for their practice problems the week the competition started. And so again, they were already kind of worn out with putting together a major presentation together and presenting it to the class, and then they had to turn around and do another one. So, lesson learned. What will we do better in the future? Well, first of all, the students really liked to travel. So hopefully, as the pandemic slows down, there's going to be an opportunity to do that. But as we've heard from some of the other people in in some of the other presentations, students are really busy, and so they tend to not have time to be able to go to those contests. We have a lot of students, as I mentioned, involved in athletics, and so it's hard for them to fit that into the schedule. So maybe if these virtual competitions continue, we can find some more excitement to build in there as well. And I certainly want to involve some of the younger students earlier. Waiting to do this with juniors and seniors turned out to be too late because we didn't know what we didn't know. And so building in some of that earlier, I think, can really help build some of the excitement around the possibilities. And we could also introduce it into our math club earlier on. And then we need some more numerical analysis, finding a way to get that into my course earlier and using that in some of the projects in the differential equation linear algebra course, I think would help. I think there's value in using the modeling approach, not so cookie cutter. And again, not a lot of the things in real world applications come out to these standard cookie cutter types of equations anyway. And then I certainly need to help the students learn to practice making videos. We practiced doing a live competition or live presentation, and then they had to turn around and put it on a video, and that didn't work. In fact, my son's video had a 4-minute silent piece right in the center of their presentation, and they couldn't figure out how to delete it in the 11th hour as they were turning in their final presentation. And of course, it won't be my first rodeo. I have learned a lot from this experience, and hopefully the students will benefit from mine and my son's foray into this contest. So thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. And I think we're running out of time, but if anybody has any questions, I would take them.
Well, thank you, Rob. That was good. I concur with the video thing. My students, they have what, 3 weeks to do it, and then they did the typical thing where they waited to the last week, and that was really disappointing. I think maybe building in some checks along the way, so like a 1 week marker and that kind of stuff, but also just the creation of the videos. There's a lot of really slick software out there, right? And I wanted the students to use that software, and they just ran out of time because they wait till last minute, So I'm thinking maybe if we put a video type presentation early in the semester, and then that kind of gets around that issue. I don't know about you, but I didn't have the kind of questions for help that I was expecting on SCUDEM, right? Like I gave the projects, I forced them to decide which projects, and then I didn't hear a peep out of them until they were due.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're working on it after I'm in bed, because I go to bed at 10.
Well, and and it's unclear to me. It says not to help them, but again, I don't know what that really means. I don't know what other coaches are doing, right? You're not supposed to do it for them. And Brian kind of said, let them to their own devices, and maybe I shouldn't have left them to their own devices as much, because I think my son really would have enjoyed this more if I could have helped him, just figure out some of the Excel, to automate more of what he was doing.
Right.
Because he was coming up with some really unique things. And, I had done difference equations in my graduate work. And so there was difference equation models that we could have even done, but I can't now in the last week teach him things
so
about
you and I want to use this as a learning tool, right? It's a pedagogical tool, not a competition. And so, so which is it? I'm okay with it being a learning experience. And I mean, the scores they're just scores, right? They're not, it's not like there's a cash prize at the end or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my son was just disappointed that he couldn't get his group to do a little more and the video quality wasn't higher, so that they could at least get that middle score.
Yeah.